The more I try to understand the United States politics, the more I realize that the United States government is not a democracy. It is just an oligarchy presented or branded as a democracy. The United States only works for only a few elites, but the majority, their views, their arguments, their challenges are not dealt with or they are not given any first priority. But the United States is so nice in terms of branding the government as a democracy. But in the real sense, the elites, the billionaires, the likes of Elon Musk, Bill Gates, those are the individuals who the government works for. But at the end of the day, as long as most Americans are proud that their government is a democracy and it doesn't really work for them, it only works for a few elites, the oligarchy, the elites are comfortable. You need to realize that the United States government was created on this idea that property came before everything else. Individuals, their property was their first priority before anything else. So initially, the individuals who had no property, they were not allowed to vote. But since they were the multitude, the government or the founding fathers had to come up with an idea in which they were going to satisfy this multitude. They were going to give them as an illusion that their views, their arguments really were valued. But in the real sense, how the government works, it doesn't work for the majority. Now, in this discussion, you are going to see Jimmy Dore and Tucker Carlson having an argument or a wake-up call that the United States government is just an oligarchy. It only works for the elites. That the difference between the United States and the governments like China or Russia is that at least Chinese government has some resource. It tries to work for the people. But when it comes to the United States, it only works for 10%. Have a look.
But it does feel like Thomas Massey's loss in the primary in Kentucky 2 weeks ago was like a kind of pivot point in American politics. What was your response to it?
Well, my response to it was, how dare we, preach democracy around the world and tell people that the people in China are oppressed when we obviously don't have democracy here, right? This is a complete. We just gave up, and so now it's the oligarchs. As I was telling you before, it's just proof that we don't live in a democracy. They did that Princeton study in 2015 about how the 90% of people, their wishes never are expressed in legislation, and it's only the top 10% of the wealthy people. And there's a direct correlation. If 50% of the wealthy people want something, 50% of the time it happens, And so, but the bottom doesn't matter. Your vote that literally doesn't matter.
There are some Americans who still believe that the United States is the greatest country on the planet. While I may agree, but there is a competition. There is a new player in the game, and that is China. Countries like China are coming up so fast. That's why most Americans who go to China, they are astonished by the progress of the Chinese people. Either in terms of transport, electric cars, we have artificial intelligence, the medical situation. Most Americans are flabbergasted on the progress of China. This is the country which a few years ago most individuals were dying of hunger. But today it's giving the United States a lot of competition and beating the United States. Even the United States comes up with other strategies which are not really about progress, but trying to prevent China from progressing. This includes the tariff war. So once most Americans realize that their country, which they were told that it's all about democracy, once they realize that is an illusion, then they will start observing this kind of progress appropriately. Once they realize that the likes of Thomas Massey, your vote really doesn't matter as long as he doesn't represent the elites. You as a poor individual, you as a person who has no property, who is stuck in a mortgage loan, who is stuck in a student loan, so long as the elites' problems are not solved fast, your own problems do not really matter. And that's the case for most Americans. Most Americans put this idea that they are a democracy, and the Middle East, those are countries which oppress the poor, which only works for the elites. But in the real sense, it is working in America, but it is hidden behind poverty. That's why, as long as individuals like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, as long as they have some challenges, the politicians who you elect are going to work for them first. Unless there's a revolution, unless there's kind of a big challenge which is going to threaten this, which is going to threaten the elites, that's when your problem will only be dealt with at some point. Let me give you a good example I saw. For instance, American farmers are facing a lot of challenges. But since Donald Trump want to please these farmers, he said he is going to give out some subsidies. And who are these subsidies going to benefit? Most individuals may think that they are going to benefit farmers. But in the real sense, this money is going to be given to farmers just as placeholders of this money. And then they are going to direct this money to reach manufacturers of farm machinery, manufacturers of seeds, fertilizers. They are going to be paid this money. So, unless a farmer, that money really didn't benefit you. You just gave it directly to big corporations. So, while you may be excited, you as a farmer, you had some assistance from the government, but it didn't really benefit you because this money went only to big corporations. So, once most Americans realize that fact, that the United States, it was not meant to work for the poor or the middle class, but the elites, at least they may have some change of mind on how they are going to solve that situation. So Thomas Massey was one of the individuals who was trying hard to fight for the American people, in that he never wanted foreign aid to go to other countries. But see where he is. He lost that election. And what was the main goal, or what made him to lose that election? The money which was spent, around 32 million US dollars in that campaign, was spent on smearing against not against Donald Trump, but against Thomas Massey, that he was not interested to work with the president. And at the end of the day, he lost that election. So it tells you that as long as the elite's interests have not been satisfied, your own interest as a middle class person, as a poor person in American context, they are not going to be solved first. You don't matter. You are not the first among equals. You are the backbencher. Anyway, what are your thoughts when it comes to the United States in terms of democracy? Do you believe it works in the United States, or it's just an illusion which most Americans are stuck in it? I would like your thoughts in the comment section. Just go ahead, like, subscribe. You can also share. See you in my next one. Siku njema.